There is a jar of meat sitting on the lowest shelf of my cellar right now. It has been there since last October. No refrigerator, no freezer, no electricity touching it. The cellar is cool and dark the way cellars are supposed to be, and that jar of pork is as good today as the morning my wife Hilda put it up. My neighbor paid over 300 euros last month for groceries. A large part of that was meat and dairy and things that had to stay cold every hour of every day or they would go bad. He cannot leave for a week without worrying about the refrigerator. He cannot lose power for more than a day without throwing food out. He is not feeding a family. He is managing a machine. My name is Martin Hofer. I grew up on a small farm in the foothills south of Munich. My grandmother Rosina kept a household of 8 people fed through every winter and every hard year with no supermarket closer than 2 hours by road. What she put on the table came from what she preserved in autumn, and what she preserved in autumn lasted until the following autumn, every year, for her entire life. Today, I am going to show you 7 of those methods. Not as history, not as a curiosity, as real, working ways to keep real food safe for a full year without a single watt of electricity. I will tell you what each one costs, what it keeps, and how long. And I will tell you the part that should make you think, which is that none of this is complicated, none of it is expensive, and all of it has been sitting quietly on the shelf while the food industry built you a system where you pay every month just to keep your own food from rotting. Stay with me. Before I go any further, I want to say the most important thing I will say in this entire video. Preserving food at home is real work with real consequences if done carelessly. Some methods here forgive a small mistake, and some do not. I will tell you which is which. Follow. Tested ratios. Start with the simple ones. Walk before you run. With that said, let me take you through it. The first method is salt curing, and it is the oldest one. Older than writing. Older than wheels. Every mountain village in Bavaria, Tyrol, and Switzerland kept salt curing alive because it had to. In winter, the mountain passes closed. There was no getting more food. What you put up in autumn was what you had. The science is plain. Bacteria that spoil meat need moisture to survive. Salt pulls the moisture out so completely that bacteria starve. For a basic dry salt cure, you use about 2.5% salt by the weight of the meat. For every kilogram of pork belly, that is roughly 25 grams of salt, just under 2 tablespoons. You rub it evenly over every surface, every fold, every edge, wrap the meat tightly in clean cloth, and store it in the coolest part of your cellar between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. A thick pork belly is cured. In about 10 days, a whole leg takes 6 to 8 weeks. For anything you plan to hang and dry for months, you add what the old butchers called curing salt. Salt mixed with a very small percentage of sodium nitrite. This is what prevents botulism in meat that hangs long. Use a tested recipe and the right curing salt at the right amount, about 2.5 to 3 grams per kilogram of meat, and the danger disappears. Skip it on a long cure, and you are gambling with something you should not gamble with. A kilogram of curing salt costs about 3 euros at any butcher supply shop and handles more meat than most families cure in a year. The second method is smoking. Behind every old farmhouse in the Bavarian highlands there was a Räucherkammer, a small stone smokehouse, low-ceilinged and dark, smelling of beechwood and thyme. My grandmother's was still standing at the edge of the orchard. We used it every November. Smoke does 3 things at once. It dries the surface of the meat. It deposits natural, antimicrobial compounds from the wood directly onto the meat that bacteria find hostile, and it creates a flavor no factory has ever matched. Cold smoking, below about 30 degrees Celsius, produces a true Schwarzwälder Schinken, or a Landjaeger sausage. It takes hours or days of slow smoke after the salt cure is finished. Hot smoking between 60 and 100 degrees Celsius cooks the meat as it smokes and is quicker. The wood matters. Beech is the traditional wood of Bavaria, clean and slightly sweet. Cherry and apple for pork. never resinous softwood like pine or spruce. The sap ruins the flavor, and what it produces is not safe to eat. Dry hardwood only. That is the rule. A properly salt-cured and cold-smoked ham hung in a dry, ventilated room keeps for 6 months easily. A good one, made the way my grandmother made it, keeps for a year and improves every month it hangs. A simple cold smoker costs under €50 to set up at home. The third method is fat sealing, what my grandmother simply called Einschmalzen, putting away in fat. The principle is airtight. Bacteria need oxygen. Submerge cooked meat completely in clean rendered lard, let the fat solidify around it, and you have sealed out the air as completely as any vacuum machine. You cook the meat low and slow until fully tender, goose legs, pork belly, thick sausages. Pack it, while still warm, into clean, dry ceramic crocks or glass jars. Pour melted lard over everything until each piece sits under at least 2 centimeters of solid fat. Let it cool. Seal the top with paper and string, and put it in the cellar. Stored at 4 to 8 degrees Celsius, it keeps 4 to 6 months reliably. The lard itself, once the meat is gone, goes back into the pot for cooking. Nothing is wasted. My grandmother had no patience for waste, and neither did anyone in our village who had lived through a hard winter. You learn to use every part of the animal when you have carried it through autumn into spring on your own hands. The fourth method is drying. The principle is absolute. Remove the water, and bacteria cannot do a thing. In Bavaria and the Alps, drying was done with meat, fish, mushrooms, herbs, fruit, and bread. Bündnerfleisch, the air-dried beef of the Swiss and Austrian mountain regions, is made by salting a lean cut of beef for several weeks, then hanging it in clean air for 2 to 3 months until it has lost nearly half its weight. What remains is dense, dark, deeply savory, and stable for a year or more in cool conditions. At home, without mountain air, an oven set to 50 to 60 degrees Celsius with the door held slightly open does the same work over several hours for thin sliced meat. The safety rule everywhere is the same. The meat should reach at least 71 degrees Celsius internally at some point in the process to kill any bacteria in the raw meat. After that, finish drying at a lower temperature until the piece is leathery. Dried meat in a sealed glass jar keeps 3 to 6 months easily, and vacuum-sealed it keeps well over a year. Dried mushrooms from my grandmother's September harvest lasted 2 years in a sealed jar and added more depth to a winter soup than anything from a greenhouse in January. The fifth method is vinegar pickling. Vinegar creates an acidic environment where spoilage bacteria cannot survive. The required acidity is a pH of 4.6 or below, which apple cider vinegar with at least 5% acidity provides reliably. In Bavaria, vinegar pickling was used for sauerbraten, pickled pork, fish, and vegetables including red cabbage and cucumbers. The brine is vinegar and water in roughly equal parts, salt, a little sugar, and the right spices. Bay leaf, juniper berries, and black pepper for meat. Dill and mustard seed for cucumbers. A jar of pickled vegetables with a strong brine and a good seal keeps for a year in a cool, dark place. Pickled pork in brine keeps 6 to 8 weeks without refrigeration. The honest word is that vinegar pickling alone is not the right method for year-long meat storage. That is what salt curing, smoking, and pressure canning are for. Use each method for the task it does best. The sixth method is pressure canning, and it is the most modern of these old methods, though it has been on Bavarian and Austrian farm tables for over 100 years. My grandmother had a large dented pressure canner she used every autumn. She filled it with jars of beef, pork, goose, and soup base, and those jars went on the cellar shelf and did not come down until they were needed, sometimes 2 years later. Pressure raises the temperature inside sealed jars to about 116 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, held for the correct time, every bacterium and every spore, including the spores that cause botulism, is destroyed. The jars seal as they cool and remain shelf-stable for 3 to 5 years if stored away from direct light. The safety word here is firm. Use a pressure canner, not a boiling water bath. Boiling water reaches only 100 degrees, which is not enough to destroy botulism spores in meat. Follow tested processing times from a reliable source, the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, the German DLG Preservation Guidelines, or any established regional food safety resource. Do not guess. Do not shorten the time. Done right, pressure canned meat is one of the most useful things you can put on a cellar shelf. Done wrong, it is dangerous. I would rather you wait and learn it correctly than rush it and regret it. A jar of pressure-canned beef stew opened 2 years after you made it and warmed in a pan with fresh bread is a meal worth €20 in any restaurant. The seventh method is the root cellar, and I save it for last because it is not just one method, but the home of all the others. A root cellar, dug below the frost line into the earth or built into a hillside with stone walls, holds a temperature between 0 and 8 degrees Celsius through the entire year. The thermal mass of the soil absorbs heat slowly and releases it slowly and keeps everything steady. Inside a properly built root cellar, apples keep from October to March, potatoes from harvest to the following spring. Carrots and beets in bins of damp sand last 6 months. Hard cheeses wrapped in cloth last for months. And every method I have described above, the salt-cured hams, the fat-sealed crocks, the jars of pressure-canned meat and pickled vegetables, all of them last longer in the steady cool of a good cellar than anywhere else in the house. My grandfather dug his into the hillside behind our farmhouse with hand tools over 2 weekends. He lined the walls with flat field stone and lime mortar. The door is thick oak, facing north so the winter sun never hits it directly. That cellar has been working since 1951. It has never needed a repair. It has never sent a bill. I want to leave you with the bigger picture because I think it matters more than any single method. The average German household now spends close to €500 a month on food. Much of that goes to refrigerated products that cannot survive a single day without cold, to packaging designed to be thrown away, to a supply chain built on the assumption that you will always be connected to it. 7 methods break that assumption: salt, smoke, fat, drying, vinegar, pressure canning, and the root cellar. Together, they can keep a family fed through a winter, through a power outage, through any disruption that has happened before and will happen again. They do not require a subscription. They do not require a monthly visit from anyone. They require knowledge, a little time in autumn, and the understanding that your grandparents were not living in ignorance when they did it this way. They were living with certainty. Hilda and I still put up meat every November. We still smoke, still salt, still seal in fat the way her mother showed her and my grandmother showed me. When the power went out for 4 days last February because of ice on the lines, we sat at that table and ate exactly as well as we always do. You can do the same. Start with the simplest method. Make jerky this weekend, pickle a jar of cucumbers, salt a small piece of pork belly, and let it cure first in the back of your refrigerator just to learn the feeling of the method before you rely on it without one. Build the skill one method at a time, the way my grandmother built it, the way her grandmother built it before her. Tell me in the comments below which of these 7 you want to try first. And if your grandmother or grandfather used any of these, if you remember a root cellar or a smokehouse or a crock of something sealed in fat in a cool corner of the house, tell me about it. Those memories are the knowledge I'm trying to keep alive on this channel. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you the Bavarian compost method my grandfather used on this farm his entire life. No fertilizer bags, no chemicals, no trips to the garden center. Just kitchen scraps, the right layering, and one small trick the old Bavarian farmers knew that makes the difference between compost that smells and rots slowly and compost that turns into perfect, dark, living soil in half the time. Your garden will show the difference by the following spring. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, find the cellar corner, find the salt, and remember the people who built this country with their hands, new things we are only just starting to remember.